Hello, I'm Faye.
And I'm Becky. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about maximising your potential as a leader and living your best life personally and professionally.
So join us on the M53 for our weekly chats, full of insights and inspiration, and of course, a cuppa and a butty.
Faye, it's called a brew. Hello, and thank you for joining us again on Meet Me on the M53. And on this episode, we have a very special guest. Steve McIntosh, who is the founder and CEO of CareerPoint, is here to talk to us about starting a business with other people. So Faye and I have both started businesses alone. We know that a lot of our audience are solo business owners. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to pick Steve's brain about the ups and downs, highs and lows, and those things to navigate when you're thinking about starting a business with other people. So Steve, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. This is my first time on the M53.
It would be
on the M6 a lot, the M77, but I don't recall the M53. So thank you for having me.
We must confess, Steve, we haven't actually ventured onto the M53 yet either. Not in real life, but we are doing so very, very soon. And obviously, for people that don't know Steve actually lives in the Cayman Islands, so it's also not very surprising that he hasn't spent much time driving on the M53.
Motorways easily avoided.
Yes, I imagine. So Steve, CareerPoint, you met your co-founders while you were doing your MBA at Oxford. What was it that actually drew you all to each other?
Yeah, so my co-founders, Sean McQueen and Sifa Ndwande. The great thing about being in Oxford and spending time on the executive MBA is that you're meeting these amazing people who've been vetted by Oxford. So you can be pretty sure of a few things. They had to have achieved a certain amount in their career so far. They had to have a certain intellect and they had to have a certain work ethic, right? And so we're starting from a good baseline, but nonetheless, I think it was just that we enjoyed each other's company. That kind of explains how we started hanging out together. It doesn't necessarily explain how we ended up in business together, but we just enjoyed hanging out. We actually worked together on the entrepreneurial project, which is kind of the EMBA equivalent of a thesis. And we got along. We just, when I came to them and told them about the CareerPoint venture, right away they said, what can we do to help? And I said, you can join me as a co-founder. But I'm at the stage of my career where I am very selective about who I work with. This is my second entrepreneurial journey, if you like. My first one, as you guys know, being a recruitment firm here in the Cayman Islands, which I founded about 17 years ago. And I think, I look for certain things in people to do business with, and it's not just getting along. We spend so much time at work now, right? It's just life's too short to spend such a huge chunk of your life with people whose company you don't enjoy on any level. So that was kind of the starting point for me. But the second thing I think drew us together was just our passion for the mission. And our entrepreneurial project had also been around human development. And Sean and Sifa were both people for whom the mission resonated. They as soon as they heard that we were helping young people advance in their careers, they wanted to get involved. And I think finally just a level of trust in each other. And that doesn't mean that we always agree on things, but it means that we don't have to spend time worrying about each other's motives, right? We all want to do what's right for the company, for our people, for our customers, and for the mission. And that saves a lot of time and a lot of pay. And I should say that we've also actually welcomed a fourth co-founder in the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
A good friend, Zena Tuitt. She's based in Maryland in the States. She's originally British, but she spent many years here in the Cayman Islands working with EY. So she's come on board to head up business development and marketing for us. And she's just an incredibly smart, hardworking, entrepreneurial and altruistic person. And those are probably the four characteristics that I think are essential in a co-founder.
Well, that's fantastic. Do you know, I love that it started with the really simple fact of you all just got on and hung out, and that kind of then from there it's grown and grown, even to the point now where a fourth co-founder. It's a really exciting time for Career Point.
We've come a long way since huddled together on a rooftop in Oxford over a beer, talking about this venture and where it might go.
Yeah. You've mentioned your mission a couple of times. Can you just share a little bit further about what the mission of Career Point is?
Sure. So we're a career advancement coaching platform, and our mission is to help 1 million young people advance in their careers. And what that means is, our starting point for that, if you like, is this one-on-one virtual coaching that helps young employees navigate the workplace and figure out a roadmap for career advancement.
Fantastic. And I think it's such a great mission. What I love about it is it targets the market that are so typically left out when it comes to sort of coaching and that development, and this idea of giving them the tools and helping them understand how it is that they actually add value in their business at the time when they really want to be looking to add value,
Absolutely. It's an underserved, it's mystifying actually, because it's where all the value in the organization comes from, is what is sometimes known as the bottom of the pyramid, if you like, right? That's where the 90% of the employees are in that zone, but 90% of the money that's spent on coaching globally is spent at VP level and above.
Yeah.
So that's a large part of what inspired us to start this.
Fantastic. I love it. And so you've already mentioned that your fourth co-founder is in, was it Maryland?
Yeah.
You're in the Cayman.
Yeah.
Sifa, correct me if I'm wrong, is he in South Africa?
That's correct.
And Sean is in New Mexico. So you are based all over the world.
We are.
What kind of challenges does that bring?
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. We've got someone in Switzerland, we've got someone in Brazil, and
wow.
when we started this company, we kind of looked at location as irrelevant, right? And that was easy to do because it was in the midst of a global pandemic, and everybody was doing everything online and across Zoom anyway, so it didn't seem like a stretch. And it's been interesting because you would think that in this day and age, there are very few barriers to working across global borders. And it has been a lot more of a struggle than we anticipated. When you look at things like something that should just be so simple, making payments and receiving payments, right? And as you guys know, we've integrated Stripe, and Stripe just doesn't work in some countries. Why? I'm not sure. It's it's to do with regulations in the country, whether it's a good market for Stripe to be in, that kind of thing. And so that was kind of unanticipated. If you look at things like intellectual property, the intellectual property system I don't think it could have changed much in the last 50 years. If you're to register a trademark, you have to go country by country. You have to spend money doing a search. You have to register it. Like, there are all kinds of things, and just employing people across borders is incredibly difficult. You would think that the UK government would want, in this day and age, its people to have access to as many employment opportunities as possible. And some of those are going to be from employers outside of the country. It doesn't work like that. It's actually very difficult to employ someone across borders. And that's something that, governments really need to wake up to this. There are all kinds of benefits to allowing overseas employers to employ someone in your country. You should make it easy, not impossible.
So lots of legalities to get your head around there that must have taken up so
logistics.
much time.
Yeah. So we're still committed to making this a global company and to trying to ignore the borders as much as possible, but we can only do it up to a point.
Yeah, absolutely. How about, because you have got people from different countries, what about the cultural differences that people sort of naturally bring with them? Have there been any from the people you've got on the top team?
Yeah. I would say there have been a few. I mean, there are certain cultural differences between Americans and Brits, dare I say.
Oh, yes.
My wife, these are cultural differences which I'm familiar with because my wife's American. And my kids would identify as American a lot more than they would identify as Scottish or British, having spent a lot more time in the States. And one thing, I mean, one big thing that came out quite early is just the sense of humor. And I mean, to be fair, my co-founder Sean has an amazing sense of humor, and I think it's one of the reasons that we enjoy working together. But where the line is drawn on the type of humor is very different, right? And to give one story about this, we were writing some animation, the script for some animation early on, and it was to promote CareerPoint and to kind of explain what we did. And in this script, I thought it would be funny to say that CareerPoint's mission is to help you advance in your career. There are two ways we can do that. The first way is to kidnap your boss's dog and tell him to give you a raise, or the dog gets it. Right? We don't recommend the first way. The second way is for us to help you understand how career advancement works. Right?
Oh dear.
And obviously, I thought this was light-hearted comedy gold. When Sean heard this, our jaw just dropped.
Really?
You can't say that. And I was like,
goodness.
Why not? No dogs were harmed in the making of the script.
Yeah.
Why can't I say that? And it was funny. I mean, she was so serious about it. At first, I kind of laughed it off. I was like, yeah, what? Of course we can say it. But who's good at? And she wouldn't. She drew a line in the sand over this, which was interesting. But it's something I have come across many times, just in the early days with my wife when I would. Because British people generally swear a lot, right?
Yes.
It's kind of we're good at swearing.
We are good at it.
We are.
It's an asset. But there were a few times when I swore when my wife was just like, "Oh my God, you can't say that. Did you just tell me to F off?" And I was like, "Sorry, is there a problem?" Right? Because that's just in the UK, that's just how we communicate.
Yeah.
In America, it's considered offensive.
Yeah,
turned out.
yeah. That can be a very kind communication sometimes, can't it? In the UK, it
Right.
can be very endearing.
See? Exactly. When you're comfortable with people, you should be comfortable communicating. But it turned out I crossed the line.
Oh, that's fantastic. So different senses of humour. And so kidnapping dogs and joking about that in the US. So that's not the dog thing.
No,
big
it's off limits.
What other pearls of wisdom would you share with somebody who was considering maybe a business partnership or a collaboration? What other pearls? I mean, I think the one about the swearing's good. What others do you have, Steve?
I mean, it's a great question. I think of all the ways that you could think about human behavior, there's one dimension that I look to consistently, whether it's friends or co-founders or employees or just people that I want to be around at all. And that is that I think everyone in the world is fundamentally motivated either by generosity or by greed. Right? Either you want to make the world a better place for other people, or you want to make the world a better place for you. And this creates, and I don't want to get too much into the kind of psychoanalysis of this, where this comes from, because I've met people with all kinds of different backgrounds, different levels, from the socioeconomic spectrum, different levels of education. I think it's independent of all of those things. It's just, there's something with, no matter where it came from, about how you see the world. And when you're in business with people, it's with working with someone who is motivated by personal gain and self-interest will become a problem at some point, right? If you have two generous people together, you're going to get along great, because it's going to be like a contest to see who can do more for the other person, right? Which is probably why you guys work together so well, right? I bet you anything you're both generous people. I know that because I know you fairly well. But if you if one person's generous and one person's greedy, the greedy person will push the boundary on what they're taking until
Yes.
eventually they cross a line and just it won't work anymore. And two greedy people working together is a recipe for disaster,
Oh
right?
gosh, yes.
So what I would look for above anything else would just be generosity. And that doesn't necessarily mean just generosity in terms of giving. It means giving of your time and what concerns you in the world. Are you all about what you can take from the world, or are you all about what you can give to the world?
I think that's such an interesting point, Steve. I've never really thought about it like that before, but you're right. You're right. And I do think that Becky and I work well together because we are constantly thinking about what can we, in terms of this podcast alone, what can we talk about that's going to help somebody else? And we are so delighted when we get that feedback, when somebody's written in to say, and we do, we get snippets that come in to say, thank you so much, this was enlightening, it really made me think. And that, it makes us both smile, we share it with each other, and it makes us very happy and happy enough to continue doing this. Absolutely. Well, we've only just started, it's going to go, we've got great places to go to with it. But I think you're absolutely right with that.
And you guys are natural podcasters, by the way. I don't know if that's an expression or if that's I'm coining a phrase there. But I enjoy the I listen to the show when I'm out running and all kinds of things.
Wow,
And
thank
you. So
that's really
you've
kind.
already
Thank you, Steve.
You've already inspired my son to become an engineer, which is awesome.
And that's incredible. That's incredible. It's beautiful.
I think prior to that, his career plan had been to become a professional video game player.
Yeah, that's my son's plan. He wants to be a professional YouTuber, so I've got to get him listening to the podcast to change his mind.
They can become engineers together.
They can. There you
absolutely.
Go. He's
if you
good
could
at
get
maths.
your own child to listen to your own podcast, let me know.
Yeah.
That could be an overlooked medium of communication with your kids.
I'll let you know how. That's funny because a few years ago I was recording a video and he was supposed to be in bed and he tiptoed down the stairs and he looked in and I walked out of my office afterwards and he said, "Mummy, are you a YouTuber?" He was so deadly serious. Are you a YouTuber?
That
useful moment. Yeah. No, I'm not.
No.
So, sure, Steve, I'm going to take you forward quite a few years. I'd love you to imagine that you're in your 70s or your dotage, you've got your slippers on, looking back at what you've achieved with your business. How will you know that you've been successful with business?
So you're giving me about 24 years. Sounds like
I'm giving you as many as you want, Steve.
Just to be specific. Faye's been really specific about how you are going to be at that age as well.
I am.
Slippers. With your slippers.
I must not be here in the Cayman Islands because slippers not required.
You're there in your flip-flops.
Yeah, there you go. Feet in the sand.
Yeah.
I mean, our mission is to help 1 million young people advance in their careers, and I think that's a great place to start. If we've accomplished that, then
brilliant. Yeah.
I think that's what this was all about, right? I think Sean and Sifa and myself and everybody who's joined the Career Point family, we're all like-minded about being focused much more on the mission than any other part of it. That's what motivated us. We all had successful careers. We'd all done reasonably well. We didn't decide to start this company to make money. It was to do something to have an impact on the world, and that's how I'd measure the success. But I think, as you know, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of my personal ambition. I really want Career Point to start a revolution in HR and management that puts people and their career ambitions really front and center of a company's strategy and purpose. And I think that's long overdue.
That's absolutely fantastic. What are the threats? Is there anything that's going to stop you?
I don't think so. I'm feeling pretty confident at this point. I think the big challenge we have is customer acquisition. We've been in business for a little over a year. We started paid services to clients in October, and so we need to get to a stage where our revenue is sustaining our expenses. We need to get to break even, just like any business, right? That's kind of how I always think about business. It's like, okay, we got to claw our way up to break even, and then once our head is above water, we can take a bit of a breather, and then we can think about the next phase, if you like.
Yes.
And we're still in that early stage, right? I mean, it's very few. Most companies don't break even for a few years. Right. And we're very much in that stage. But it's not, but what concerns me isn't really, you might think it is, or it might be the first place your mind goes to would be to the competitive environment. But actually, as you guys know, coaching as an industry is growing very rapidly. I mean, the demand is growing and the supply is growing too. But actually, competition isn't a big factor. It's not something that we spend a lot of time thinking about, because coaching is quite a fragmented landscape. And most companies haven't yet integrated coaching into their learning and development programs, especially not at the so-called bottom of the pyramid level. If they have begun to integrate it, it's probably at the leadership level. Personally, I think leadership is a little overrated. That's a discussion topic for another day.
Oh, I was going to say, Steve, I feel there could be a debate on another podcast coming there.
Bring it on. But even though there are coaching companies in this space, for us, no one's really in our space. No one else is doing career advancement coaching. They talk about careers in little parts of their website, but it's not their mission. And I think that creates somewhat of a challenge for us. But if you look at the companies that are out there, I mean, the best known, the biggest player in this space would be BetterUp, best known for having hired Prince Harry as their Chief Impact Officer in February. In fact, I think most people probably wouldn't have heard of the company at all prior to that, but there's a reason for that. So in their most recent fundraising round, BetterUp mentioned that they have 600 clients, which kind of, I looked at and thought, really? Wow. I mean, there are 4,000 listed companies in the States, and there are 200,000 companies with revenues between 20 million and $1 billion. And they have 600 clients, and they're the biggest. They're valued at about $4 billion. Wow. So that gives you a sense of, and in the business development work we've done to date, we have not one single time come up against a competitor. Not once.
Wow.
It's just not. So that's why we don't spend a lot of time thinking about competition, because A, no one's really offering what we do, and B, this is just like open landscape, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's more, the challenge for us is more about messaging our value proposition, because our business model is what we would call B2B2C, right? So the end user is the employee, but we need the employer to purchase it on behalf of their employee, right? So the employee can purchase it, but it would be quite an investment for an employee, which is not to say that it wouldn't be worth it. Absolutely would. Bargain.
Very worth it,
an
yes.
investment in
And
yourself,
definitely a
right?
bargain, yeah.
But we know, because companies like Coursera, who are selling online e-learning modules for as little as $50, 90% of their revenue comes from corporate L&D customers. So we know that this is mainly coaching is going to be something that employers pay for on behalf of their employees. So what we found is that there are companies who get it right away. So we have a meeting with them and we talk about the importance of career advancement to their millennial and Gen Z employees, and they get it right away. They're like, well, absolutely, of course this matters to us. We can't thrive unless our employees are thriving. Career advancement is what motivates everybody in this category. They all want career advancement. If they can't see it, then they'll leave. So it's an issue for retention. It's an issue for engagement. It's an issue for diversity, because you need to attract and retain diverse talent. And, it's not always, it can be difficult to do that. So some companies get it right away, but other companies kind of look at it and they're like, well, why would we pay for our employees to advance in their careers? Yeah. And that's where it's not so much talking about the broad benefits, but more focusing on the specific pain point that the company has and how we can help them address that pain point. And that's this is very much what we're figuring out at the moment, which is in the tech space, it's called finding product market fit, right? It's finding which part of the market does our product best suit, or how do we adapt the product to best suit this market?
Yeah. And do you know what, Steve? I've mentioned it before on this podcast. This is the work that I was doing back in 1998, albeit in a different market, not in the States. I was doing it in the UK and very specifically in quite a rural area. But this is the work that I was doing back in 1998, and we're still doing this work now to try and get companies to understand how training and developing their staff will help them retain, will help them, have the best possible staff to take their business forward with wherever they want to go. We're still doing that work now.
Absolutely.
And it's still such a long way off.
It's still such a long way off.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was talking about, the revolution of HR and management, is that I've used this phrase for years, that HR is the new IT.
Yeah.
By which I mean that it's right. So ever since I joined the workforce in 1998, IT has been this shiny object, and companies are just obsessed with it. It's how can we use this technology to save money? And what's amazing is that, and this is kind of a puzzle for economists, that all of this technology has not made people more productive.
No.
And I think the reason is that it's just become so much of a distraction, and it's become so much more difficult for employees to figure out how they add value, because it's now the working environment is becoming more and more complex. So there was just a study by Gartner that showed that on average, compared to 3 years ago, job specifications require 3 additional skills. So 3 years ago, they required 18 skills on average. This is among professional jobs. Now they require 21. And not only that, 8 of the skills that are on there now didn't exist 3 years ago.
Wow.
Which is right. That's in 3 years. Imagine how much it's changed in 20 years. And what those 3 additional skills represent is an increasingly complex workspace that makes it much more difficult for people. So young people especially have so much autonomy in the workplace. What do they do with that autonomy? That is kind of the challenge of that generation, is figuring out how to strike the balance between autonomy and guidance, and how to teach them to use the autonomy they have wisely, which I think is the missing part of the puzzle, and it's kind of what Career Point is all about.
And I think that's something that both Faye and I have come across with some of our younger coachees, that they do kind of have, like you say, this autonomy, but they don't actually know what to do with it. And then they're not actually getting the guidance that they need, but they don't know that they're not getting the guidance they need, and that it's okay to ask for more, and to actually to raise your voice, and to ask for those things that actually should be given a standard. But you're right, this bottom level of the pyramid, this is my play space as well in with Quest for Est, because it's just such an underused, under-resourced, undervalued part of that pyramid. And I'm totally with you. If we get that bit right, the knock-on effect going up is huge, both for the individuals and for the company.
These are the leaders of the future, right? And absolutely. I mean, looking back in my own career, and this was a big part of the inspiration for starting Career Point, no one gave me any guidance. So 85% of people, studies show, don't have someone in the workplace that they consider a mentor. 85%. And we know that it's worse among women and minorities, right? Because they look up and they don't see people like them who would be viable mentors, right? And it's a crazy situation. Everybody needs a coach to be super successful. If you wouldn't start playing golf without hiring a coach, right? And like, golf is something that you might do 4 hours a week, but you're at work 40 hours a week.
Exactly.
You think a coach might be able to help.
Yeah.
And when I look back in my own career, so I started at KPMG as a chartered accountant. I was young, I needed the money. But the crazy thing was that the people who were mentoring me were like 2 years older than me, right? And when
Yes.
I was a manager at KPMG, I was 27, and I was mentoring. I don't mean to malign 27-year-olds, but it took me at least another 10 years
Yeah.
to figure out that leadership wasn't about telling people what to do.
Yes.
It was
Gosh.
about,
Yes.
right? Well, it was
Yep.
about figuring out how to help them by first figuring out what they needed help with. And this is why I think leadership is a little overrated, because leadership is kind of the opposite of autonomy, right? In a way. And I think when we talk about leadership, we're talking about a lot of different things, right? Because yes, leadership is about caring for your team and having a certain culture and all that stuff. But leadership is also about achieving results. And if you ignore the need to achieve results and talk only about the culture and what it has to do for the culture, it becomes kind of any company could have a great culture and leadership environment if they just ignore the need to achieve results, right? And at the same time, if all they focus on is the need to achieve results, they're going to have a lousy culture. The real difficulty in leadership is striking the balance between the two.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But when you speak to young people, what young people want more than anything is autonomy, which in a sense is a lack of leadership. So it's by focusing so much on leadership and what leadership can do for a company. Don't get me wrong, leadership is very important, but it only serves a purpose up to a point. And if you as a young person want autonomy and you want to progress in your career, what you really need to focus on is followership and how to become an asset to the company rather than how to become a manager. Right? That's where it's kind of the focus is on, we want these people to become leaders in the organization, so we're going to put them on leadership training. And then what happens is you become a leader in the company at the age of 28. You're spending 99% of your time doing other things and 1% of your time doing leadership because you've got a team of 3 people, right? And you've actually got a job to do. So you're just supervising people. You're not like CEO of the company. So to have too much focus and emphasis on leadership at that point, without putting it in the context of how that person adds value in the company, I'm the jury's out for me. But I've yet to see the research that confirms this either way. One day, I hope to be able to do the research myself.
I was going to say, one day, Steve, I'll shove the research under your nose and I'll show you.
Please
How's
do
that
it
for a challenge?
anytime. Absolutely, I look forward to seeing it.
No, and it's interesting. It's interesting to see it from that different perspective. And like I say, I think we could talk about the value or the importance or not of leadership for a long time, because it's my passion.
But I think, like I was just going to say, I think, like Steve says, though, it is that balance. You have got to be working towards, as I always say, north, where the company is going, what the company is striving to achieve, and you don't do that by allowing free for all. You do that by looking constantly at where you're at and at the skills and the development that your people need in order for you to get there. It's always about that business objective, where you're going.
Yeah.
So, Steve, we are coming to the end of our time together. We've got one last question for you. Given that your team are in some lovely locations around the world, we want to know who you'll be visiting first for a cheaper holiday.
Wow. Well, it certainly isn't cheap to get to South Africa from the Cayman Islands.
It's true.
I can imagine.
You get Sifa to put you up.
I think by the process of elimination, it might be a trip to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to hang out with Sean, or we should just bring everyone to the Cayman Islands. That's probably the easy answer.
Well, you've mentioned that before, and that sounds like a very exciting.
Sounds like a good idea, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll make that happen before we've helped 1 million people advance in their careers. Rest assured.
Good.
Wonderful. Steve, thank you so much. It has been really interesting talking to you. Thank you for your advice, your thoughts, your pearls of wisdom around what it takes to successfully start a business with other people. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for listening to Meet Me on the M53. If you'd like to know more, you can see Becky at questforest.co.uk and Faye at fayeblakey.com.
Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode, and thank you to Wahoo Media for our production. We'll see you next time on the M53.
Safe travels.